Hey there, Banditos. Thank you for joining us for a brand new episode for a brand new week. Where, as always, we fling open the doors of your local comic book shop and talk to your favorite creators of the comic book world. I am Joe Marcello.
I'm Warren Phillips.
I'm Mike Farah.
And today's interview is with a writer who's done a smattering of a little bit of everything. We're talking about comics, books, TV. He's a big DC guy with a long run on Superman from 1972 to 1986 and Batman from 73 to 76. He's also written for TV shows such as X-Men, Spider-Man, and Batman the Animated Series, one of our favorites. We're talking about Elliot Maggin.
Yeah, Elliot is pretty interesting because besides being a writer, he is also a character in the DC universe. He's written himself into a few books. One of them I actually picked up a couple weeks ago when I was reading through. I'm like, whoa, that's him. So to speak to somebody who is walks both worlds is pretty awesome.
I wasn't able to make this interview. I'm jealous, guys, because this is the person that helped introduce Superboy Prime, Superwoman. He also was the initial writer on the Bat Family, and we know how valuable the family of Batman type characters has become to DC. So really interesting character in and among himself, and would love to hear more. So I'm looking forward to it. This is Elliot S. Maggin.
We're going to be asking you some really, fun questions about your career. And we kick it off the same way with every one of our guests. And we ask them how you discovered comics.
In a barber shop in Brooklyn.
Nice.
My father used to like to hang out with Andy the barber up the street. And so I got a haircut every couple of weeks. And he had this big table full of comics. And I would read his, and then I'd get my dad to buy me some. Every once in a while he would.
Any particular characters that kind of caught your eye or that you were a fan of back then?
Superman, Superboy, I liked them. Supergirl didn't exist yet then, so I liked her too. I liked Green Lantern a lot. I like Green Lantern. And I always regret I didn't get a chance to write more of that.
Yeah, I have to say, what kind of jumped out to me about your career is your involvement with Superman, but as well as Green Lantern, two of whom are my just absolute favorite characters.
Yeah.
And doing our research on you, we discovered that, early on in your career, basically you're working as a teenager professionally. And
yeah, barely.
You get your first published story drawn by Neil Adams.
Yep.
And it's John Stewart. It ends up becoming the introduction.
No. It was the Green Arrow story in that book.
Oh, Green Arrow. Okay.
It was the same issue, but
okay.
I think Denny never gave me any heat about my horning in on his book, but I think he just got used to having Green Arrow hanging out with somebody doing a buddy story, so he created John Stewart for that issue, and he took off.
And not that he just took off. I mean, he is, for a generation, he is their Green Lantern. I mean, for so many before, it was Alan Scott, then it was Hal Jordan, and certainly now, even my son, who's 7 years old, he's watching all the new animated shows, and they focus on John Stewart, and he is the Green Lantern. Not, no mention of any of the others, by the way.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously, if you read the comics, you can get into those, but in any of the cartoons, the TV shows, very little, mention of all the others. John Stewart is the guy. I mean, you must be pretty psyched about something like that.
Well, I like that. Yeah, I mean, they did do a Green Lantern movie, which didn't do well. I liked it a lot. Ryan Reynolds, Green Lantern. He made a great Green Lantern. He made a better Green Lantern than he made a Ryan Reynolds, I think. But
yeah. Now, can you clarify kind of how that got created for us? Because I was under the assumption that was your story that kind of got adapted.
No, my story was the Green Arrow story in the back.
Okay.
It was half the book, but I wrote a term paper.
That's what I found.
I was a junior in college, and I wrote a term paper for a history class,
Okay.
contending that comic books were, it was on the history of the media. So I was contending that comic books were a political tool, as they were at the time in several countries. Not so much in the United States, but I wrote a political story, and I got a B plus. Wikipedia says it was a B minus, which I hear is funnier, but I got a B plus. And I went to the professor and asked him, I said, when you write a comic book as part of a term paper, you get either an A or an F. What does it mean that I got a B plus? He said, well, I thought you were going to draw it too. I can't draw. So the B plus stood, and I was pissed about it. So I sent it to Carmine Infantino, who was publisher at DC at the time. And
as one does.
As one does. And he didn't read it. He gave it to Julie Schwartz, and Julie didn't read it. And he gave it to Neil Adams, who read it on the subway on the way home. And he came back the next day and he said, if you buy this, I'll draw it. That's how it came to be Neil who drew it. So Julie, it was a 20-page story. Julie wrote me back and said, can you shorten this to 13 pages? We'll publish it. I said, great. And I did, and he did, and Neil drew it, and it was fun.
Go back to your teacher and be like, look at this.
Huh?
Go back to your techer and just shove it in their face.
Yeah, I did.
This is what a B gets you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was all over the school bookstore when it came out. It was a big hit at Brandeis, but I don't know anywhere else. But
now, being a young man in the industry at the time, was it ever overwhelming for you with all that goes into the comic industry and working with some of these big names, or did you take that in stride?
Yeah, I broke my leg sometime the first year I was working, and I was too intimidated to ask anybody to sign my cast. So my girlfriend signed it and my mother signed it, but I didn't get, Denny or Neil or Julie or any of those people to sign it. I made friends with them, but it took a while.
But that's still, as you say, you got to know them and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, but not because I broke my leg.
No, I think, other reasons. And one of the reasons, of course, is Superman, which we're very well connected with. When you got started to write Superman, for you, what did you think was working on the book, and what did you think was maybe not working so well for the book?
You mean before I took it on?
Yeah.
Well, I wanted him to be a human. I wanted him to be a human with superpowers. He was born and raised on Earth. He had a Kryptonian name, but he didn't remember Krypton. And he was raised by these two iconic figures who were like the perfect mother and father. And I thought he should reflect that. I don't know what Kryptonians were like. I mean, when I left, John Byrne did a whole bunch of stuff about what Kryptonians were like, and I wouldn't have made them like that. Mm-hmm. But I always contended that Superman was the real identity and that Clark was the disguise. But I wanted Superman to be human. I mean, if my son-in-law is working on the Mars lander, and he met this girl who's being groomed to be an astronaut on the first attempt to set up a colony there, and evidently, a trip to Mars is a lifetime trip. It's a one-way trip, and Superman's trip to Earth was a one-way trip, and he's an Earthman. Just as if we sent a 15-year-old girl to Mars, she'd be a Martian. So I don't know what Martian values are, but we'll find out, I hope, before long, because she's 18 now, and I don't want her to get too old before she gets there. Yeah, so I wanted to make him human. I wanted him to have a real relationship with a real human person. And I think what I would have done if I'd stayed on it longer would be to develop the relationship with Lex. ostensibly his enemy, who had been his friend. But that's what I thought was missing in the series at the time. I didn't think it was a grievous error to leave it out, but I had thought about it, so I wanted to deal with that. Make sense?
I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't know how to follow up with what you just said.
Really?
Your son-in-law is working on
Oh yeah, well, he's an engineer. That's all.
How do you follow up with anything that's going to compete with that? That's amazing. That is absolutely amazing.
I mean, he's just an engineer. He's one of the he's one of a team. He's a good kid. He's a good kid. I'm very impressed with him.
They make podcasts. But in all honesty, that is fantastic. That is really something. So kind of keeping in line with the Superman, how did you go from well, I thought it was Green Lantern, but actually Green Arrow, to make that transition to Superman? And was that, I mean, that must have been quite an undertaking for you. Just, was there any pressure on your part to start working on Superman?
Well, yeah, Denny was writing it, and Lynn had written a couple of them. And Lynn liked Superman. Denny didn't. Denny didn't like Superman at all. And he wrote some of the best Superman stories I'd ever read. But he thought he wasn't realistic. He thought Batman was realistic. And I told him he was out of his mind. I said, the likelihood of a gazillionaire playboy running around at night beating up criminals is nil. It's negligible. It doesn't exist. And I explained to him why I thought a Kryptonian with superpowers was much more realistic than a Batman with a mask and a lot of fancy gadgets. Elon Musk thinks he's Batman, but he's not. He's just
wacko.
Yeah, no, he's kind of wacko, but what do you expect? Yeah, I mean, there are like 800 billionaires in the United States, and not a single one of them has become Batman. They're all losers.
Yeah. There's a number of like internet groups that discuss that type of thing, and I think it's hilarious because absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's any number of like you said, billionaires in the country, none of them using their money for, I will say, purposes that will improve, ground level, the ground level of the world, as opposed to, we're trying to change the environment and renewable energy. That's great. But why don't you help the little people? Why don't you, prevent crime, create a cool car that you can drive around at night with and beat up bad guys? None of that.
I've never been that preoccupied with money, but I decided in my next life that's what I'm going to do.
Smart.
That's a good idea.
When I was about 7 or 8, that my dad and I were flying around Brooklyn in whirlybats, fighting crime, and I think I've always kind of wanted to do that, but not this life. The next one.
Next time around.
Yeah, and I'm planning for it. I just don't want to start it anytime soon.
Yeah. The billionaire part too, right?
Yeah.
Because you need to be to live in Brooklyn now.
Well, I like it here. I like this thing I'm doing now.
Good.
And I'm going to stay a while.
All right, good. Well, I hope so. So I want to follow up also with a character that I absolutely love, being, obviously, since I am a Superman fan, is what is now become known as Superboy Prime. You were involved with the creation of that Superboy, correct?
I created him. I wasn't involved with it. I made it up.
Okay, good. No, I just
completely different character now.
I said involved with only to make sure I cover all my bases in case my research was incorrect. So
yeah.
Now, obviously, that character has gone through some serious changes over the years, being more than just a Superboy from I guess another universe that has powers, to becoming just a badass in the truest form of the word. What are your thoughts on the evolution of that character over the years?
Well, it's not the way I would have gone. They picked up on a character I created, and good luck to them. Len Wein always used to say, and Len created Wolverine, and he created Swamp Thing, and a bunch of other stuff. And he always used to say, once they're out in the world, they're like kids. They go their own way, and you got to let them. And I was kind of pissed about what they did with my Superboy. He was from here. He was from Harvard. And I took what Len told me to heart. Certainly he had more claim on being a creator of major characters than I did. I don't think he had more claim on being a creator of major ideas, but major characters, he was the champ. So it's okay,
Well, they did redeem the character at the end of his.
Did they?
Yeah.
I haven't been following it lately.
Yeah, so I've enjoyed his arc over the years, from Crisis to the next Crisis to Green Lantern versions, and then back again. So they finally sent him back to his home world, and he was redeemed, trying to do the right thing. So I appreciated that, because I think there were a lot of people out there who were fans of the character who were just really upset the fact that they made him a corrupt Superboy and made him a spoiled brat, basically. And, they more or less brought him back to the core of what the character was. And, took a long time, but people were listening.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of like the career of Justin Bieber, he was this normal kid who put a bunch of stuff online, and suddenly he was this big star, and he got self-important, and now he's like a regular performer. He can do what he does pretty well.
I would love to see the Green Lanterns kick his ass, though.
Would you?
Justin Bieber? Yes, very much so.
That would be fun.
Are there any Superman stories that you did that, you felt really you were hitting on all cylinders, that are some of your personal favorites?
Number 400.
Okay.
It was the anniversary issue. I didn't really have an overall title for it, but it was, people started referring to it as I can't remember now, When Heroes Live or something like that. The Living Legends of Superman, I think they called it. And it was a series of stories that Superman wasn't actually in. It was about the historical perspective on the character. This was issue 400. By then it was in the popular consciousness for 45 years, and I was maybe 30, 35 at the time. So as far as I was concerned, he was there forever. What I did was I went through a bunch of futuristic periods in history, and in each period, that the character of that point in history looked back on Superman in a different way, and that was a lot of fun. I was really pleased with that. Did you know it?
Yes.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I mean, we got a bunch of really good artists to work on it, people who hadn't done Superman before. I would have liked to have Kurt Swan do everything, but Al Williamson isn't bad.
Yeah.
Mike Kaluta's not half bad. So, that was my favorite story of all the stories I did, and I did it toward the end of the period I was writing it.
And one book that you did that quick question about is the one that had Superwoman in it.
Yeah.
Annual dinner, which I enjoyed quite a bit, and I always hoped that they would have done more with the character. Were there ever any plans to take her a certain direction?
Yeah. I mean, if I continued on it, I would have done more with her.
Okay.
She was based on a character I created for my novel, Miracle Monday. She didn't have superpowers in the novel, but she was the same character. She was a historian from the 27th century, I guess. 28th century, I don't know. Her name was Kristen Wells, and she came back in time to do research for a monograph. and found herself part of the history she was researching. She didn't have superpowers really, but she'd had a bunch of gadgets that she brought from the 27th century and simulated superpowers. And because she saw this superwoman costume lying around on somebody's bed, she put it on and went and fought crime and did good stuff. Yeah, it was a character I liked a lot. I still do. And I kind of have license to her. I've got a book in the wind, a novel that she's a major character in.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I wanted to also get your thoughts on something you were not a part of, but I'm always very curious of how you would have handled it, which would be the death of Superman. First, did you think it was necessary? And B, how would you have handled something like that?
I would have convinced them not to do it.
Okay.
I just didn't think, I kept telling people I killed Superman off 5 times in the course of the 15 years I was working on him. I never got a press release. I didn't think it was a big deal. But what they did with the death of Superman was eliminate that as a plot device. They made a big deal about it. They did a lot of press on it. Dan Rather talked about it on the CBS Evening News. And you can't do it again. You can't have Superman fake his death. You can't have Clark Kent die by accident so Superman could do something. You can't, I did all these things in the course of that period, and nobody ever made a big deal about it, and I didn't want them to. I would have rather they made a bigger deal about Superman number 400. But no, I didn't think it was a good idea.
Gotcha.
It made them a lot of money. I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah. It's never a bad thing.
No, that's good.
My last Superman question for you is there are a lot of in the 80s team up books that featured Superman with different folks, and I'm reading a book now about team ups, and they said, for some of the writers of the main books, like you were writing for Superman, some of the continuity from your books would sometimes be lost in some of these team up books. Was that ever an aggravation for you when something would happen in a different book and you're like, this is nothing to do, or this goes against what we've been doing in this book?
Well, no, I mean, it didn't bother me. I liked it when people who were really, really good used my characters as asides, there was this character who wrote the obituaries for the Daily Planet, and he knew Clark was Superman. And I don't know if you remember that story, but whatever.
I don't.
Yeah, but he put it in the file somewhere, wrote the obituary like you do if you're on the staff at that end of the process. And Julie said, "This is a good character. Let's never use him again." I said, "Okay." Never refer to him again. Never mention the fact that he knows Superman's secret identity, because it's just a can of worms. And when Alan Moore did the last 2 stories before Julie retired, he just had him standing in a corner, same character, just made sure he was there. And I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
That I like. I don't know. I don't like it when they elide things I started to allude to, but I did get shut out of it after a while, and I just assumed they didn't use my stuff, because I want to use my stuff.
Right. Going to now, spoke Superman, talk a little about Batman. You did work on the Batman family. Did you have to change your style at all to do sort of more of a team book, as opposed to what you're doing before?
I don't know that I changed my style. I wasn't aware of my style.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, sorry.
Okay.
I think when I started writing, I showed a couple of stories to one of my professors, and he told me there are 3 voices in it. There's your voice, and there's some other guy's voice, and there's some character's voice, and I wasn't aware of it. I think it's like that, I didn't really change my style unless you noticed it. I didn't notice it.
I mean, I also just having to write for so many, various characters going on in one book, as opposed to solely focusing maybe on one character specifically.
Yeah, well, that's hard. It just makes the story harder to tell. You have to, when you got a JLA JSA team up, for example, you spend like 6 pages setting up the story before you deal with Act 1.
Right.
That's hard, but you try to do as little of it as you can. You remember when Jerry Conway wrote a Superman Spider-Man team up?
Yep.
Yes.
It was really good, I thought, and I wanted to do it. And they gave the assignment to Jerry because he was writing Spider-Man at the time, and there was never really any competition for who should get that assignment. And I was kind of pissed. I wasn't pissed at Jerry. I was pissed at whoever else made the decision. But I read the story, and at some point, Superman runs into Spider-Man somewhere in New York, and I thought to myself, this is very good. You know what I would have done with this story? I would have spent 7 or 8 pages justifying. Oh, sorry. Red Cross is calling. They want my blood. I would have spent 7 or 8 pages justifying having Superman from Earth 1 meet Spider-Man from Earth Marvel, and going through all sorts of contortions to make that happen. And it would have lost, that many pages of story space. It was a good story. And let's not even think about that.
I was gonna say though, but it is pretty cool that you threw your hat in the ring to be part of
Well,
it.
I didn't know they were doing it until they did it.
Okay. Gotcha.
I mean, yeah. Tom Snyder talked about it on the Tomorrow Show. I was kind of jealous.
Well, there's still time.
You think? Tom's gone.
No, everything counts now in DC. Everything matters. If it happened in some way, shape, or form. So,
Really?
Yes.
So all my stuff happened.
It did.
Okay, good.
Quite literally, because of the current whatever number crisis is going on. They've been able to justify everything that's happened in the DC universe in some fashion due to the infinite Earths that are there now again, and everything happened. So
and about time too. They should never have gotten rid of them.
I was going to ask actually. So what I love listening to you because you clearly have some really strong opinions on things.
Well, I don't have any reason to withhold them.
Well, that's a lot of people are try to be diplomatic about it.
Yeah, forget it.
And I would love to know if you have any thoughts on the current state of comics.
I don't know.
Okay,
I haven't been following them. I really haven't, and it wouldn't be fair of me to make an opinion on them.
No, fair enough. Okay.
I've been watching TV shows. I've been watching the movies.
Yeah,
but I haven't followed the comics very much.
Okay, all right, no problem at all. One thing that you worked on that I'm interested in knowing how it happens and how you got involved with is novelization of Kingdom Come.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a huge fan of that. I have the ultimate gigantic size behind me. It's one of the books I always kind of go to whenever I want to read something. How does one get involved in a novelization of a graphic novel, and what does that really entail?
Okay, I don't know. They came to me.
Okay.
And I wish they would more often because I don't know who to ask about it. But it was a lot of fun. I want to do more of them. I don't know that anybody's doing many more things like that, but I did 2 novels that came out with the first 2 Superman movies that Chris Reeve was in, and they were both bestsellers. They did very well. I don't know why I didn't do any more. I think Paul Levitz gave me the script for the 3rd movie, and he asked me if I'd be interested in doing a novelization of the screenplay. And I said, maybe. And I read the screenplay and I said, no, which wasn't the best career move. I would have liked to do another novel, my own story. I wouldn't even have minded doing a novelization of the first 2 movies, but I didn't. and they didn't need one. And Mario Puzo was contracted to do the novelization of both of those scripts, and he never did. So I guess that's what they would have preferred to have, but I gave it to them, and it was a lot of fun to do. The Kingdom Come book, I got a phone call from Mark Wade, who said, "Have you read Kingdom Come?" And I said no. So he sent me the first 2 issues and the pencils with inks with letters for the 3rd one, and the script for the 4th one. And I read them, and I said, I really like your sensibility, and I'm sure it would be fun to do it, but they won't give me the same deal I had on the 2 Superman novels I did. If they give me that, I'll do it. If they don't give me that, forget it. I'm not going to do it. He said, "We'll just read them." So I read them. And at the end of the 4th book, he dedicated the thing to me. He liked, so I called him up and I said, "You put me in a shitty bargaining position. How am I gonna say no?" So I did it. And I liked it. I liked doing it. It was fun to do. It was fun to see on the shelves. It was fun. The only thing that wasn't fun was arguing with my editor about it, who turns out to be a pretty good guy. I argued with him a lot. He was younger then. But I like the book. There are a couple of things that I put into the manuscript that mysteriously vanished from the final version, but that's fine.
Really, such as?
Oh, just little things. I mean, at some point I had Bruce call up Talia at the end of the book, and she was Mother Talia at Mother Teresa's old nunnery. And he said, "I didn't even know you were Catholic." She said, "No, we're Muslim, but I'm flexible." And he said, "Yeah, we're Episcopalian, but I'm flexible too." And they took that out, and they said, we don't want to favor any particular denomination. I said, for Bruce Wayne not to be Episcopalian would be ridiculous.
That's funny.
But they didn't want to do that. So there were little things here and there, but it came out pretty good.
It's again one of my favorite stories to read and reread and reread. I would love to know, in your career, has there been a character or a story that you've really wanted to just, really sink your teeth into and tackle, and just for whatever reason weren't, never had the opportunity to do so?
I would have liked to do more in Green Lantern. I would have liked to write Doctor Strange. I love Doctor Strange. And I didn't do many stories for Marvel. And Dave Michelini was doing a great job on it at the time. I remember he came to a party at my house one day, years earlier, and he made some crack about wanting to write a Superman story. I said, "No, you can't write a Superman story. You're not allowed." And so I guess that's one of the reasons I never wrote Doctor Strange, but I would have liked to. Who else? I was thinking about something the other day, and I can't remember what it was, what I would have liked to do. But I really would have liked to explore Luther and Superman's relationship further. I did a little of that, but I would have liked to do more.
What was your experience like as an editor? Did you enjoy editing books, or
I hated it.
Hated it?
I just hated it. I hated the job, and I thought it's a job I should be good at because I studied journalism in graduate school. I knew all about doing stuff like that. And I think that was part of the reason I didn't stay with DC any longer. I had a graduate degree from an Ivy League university. It was threatening to people. And it didn't even occur to me at the time. But I didn't like the process of letting other people do the work. I just didn't, it just wasn't fun. You know, I took on more and more books until I had like 19 a month toward the end of the time I was there. I don't know, it was, you know, they counted the licensed books as a book and a half because there was extra work to do with the licensor. But it was a lot of work. I would have liked to do more freelance while I was there, but I just kept taking on more and more jobs that get me there till 7, 8 o'clock at night. When Paul would walk up the hall saying, "Go home, go home, go home." Everybody was there at 7:30. Paul would order them out of the building. At some point, I stayed overnight to catch up on billing, vouchering for my freelancers because I was going away for 2 weeks. And somebody said, "Oh, you know, somebody was here overnight. The security guy said so. Nobody came in." And I said, "Oh, that was me. No big deal. I was just, you know, talking to," and there was a statue of Clark sitting in the hall. So I used to talk to him once in a while. But Paul comes into my office and he says, "Pull anything like that again and you're out of here." I said, "Seriously?" You know, he says, "Yeah." He says, "It's not safe. It's not safe for you to be here." It didn't occur to me. But it was a lot of work. It was more work than I wanted to do. And I was used to freelancing all hours of the night. So, you know, it was something I was able to do. I had a lot of energy. I was, you know, younger then. But I just wanted to do more of the creative end and less of the assigning of things.
And part of the editing you did, as you just mentioned before, was with TSR, which was owned by someone else. How much input did they have on their books, or was it you guys pretty much had free reign to do?
Well, we had something close to free reign as long as we didn't screw around with their characters, with characters they had created and were dealing with. But you know, they reviewed everything, and I was on the phone with them constantly. Made friends with everybody over there. But it was more work. It was more work to do than a regular, you know, DC book. Gotcha. I think the only DC book that wasn't licensed that I edited was the Challengers of the Unknown series. I did 6 of the 7 of those. And my name got dropped off starting with number 2 because I had left. I moved to California. And apparently that's something you're not supposed to do in the 1980s. So
you were ahead of your time.
I was ahead of my time. They're here
because
now.
Everyone does it now.
Yeah, everybody goes to California. But here I am.
Yeah.
Still.
And you've also been a character in comic books as well.
Yeah, I'm licensed.
How crazy is that? That
I'm a copyrighted character.
You're a living comic book character.
I am. Yeah, I had a friend, still do, named Max Maven, who's a magician. He's a really good stage magician. He's a terrific guy. And I went to college with him when his name was not Max Maven. And I made him a character in the Miracle Monday novel, the second of the Superman novels. And he knew all about it. I just made him a character. And he called up Warner Books at some point a few months before the book came out, because he knew all about it. He'd read it. And he said, "I'm a character in Miracle Monday." And they said, "No, you're not. We don't have any licensed characters in Miracle Monday. All the characters are fictional." He says, "No, you don't understand. I want to help. I want to do publicity. I want to run around the country with Elliot making noise about this book." And they said, "No, no, no, you don't exist. Goodbye." Click. And that would have been fun. Max is a good guy. But they didn't want to, they wouldn't hear of it. So what question am I answering? I don't remember now.
Just that you are a character.
Yeah, well, so is Max Maven.
I say that there's no Elliot Maggin action figures coming out anytime soon or anything like that.
Not that I know of.
Soon.
Max would make a good action figure, you know. He's got that, I don't know.
He's got that widow's peak, right? He's got the
Yeah,
slick
he's
back
got this
hair,
widow's
and
peak, everything's shaved off,
very
like just in a V
neatly.
pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, little goatee. He always wears black. He has this black flowing robe he walks around Hollywood with.
He's got that, very
Yeah,
intense look on him.
yeah.
Oh, I remember his shows.
He stares at the audience at the beginning of the show until it's completely silent, and then he starts. You know,
That's kind of how we do it too.
Yeah.
yeah.
So before we go, I want to ask, what do you have coming up next that we can look out for?
I'm doing a couple of novels, which I haven't shown to anybody, except a few of my friends. I've got a trilogy of time travel stories that Kristen Wells is involved with. I got a soft porn book I'm working on. I don't know if that'll actually ever see the light of day, but I wanted to do it because I promised my sister I would. And I got another one that I'm working on now that I can't seem to get to the end of, but I always tell people the last 20 pages of a book makes the book. So I'm not there yet. We'll see. And I don't want to tell you about that because it's just one of those things that's high concept.
Fair enough.
But I got a book out called Not My Closet, which is the only book I've ever written that's about people who don't fly under their own power. They're about real people. And I reissued the two books from the 70s and 80s, the Superman books. What else? A bunch of stuff. Look in Amazon, look in bn.com. It's all there.
Very cool. Now, are you on social media? Where can fans check you out?
I check out Facebook pretty much every day.
Okay.
And it gets me annoyed, and then I close my laptop and go home.
As it does, of course.
Yeah, Facebook gets me annoyed, and then I watch the news. It's really very weird.
Yeah.
It's a vicious circle, really, because
I know.
like you go here, like, I hate this, and then you go here, like, I hate it too, and then you say, I'm going to bed.
Glutton for punishment.
Yeah.
I got these two guys I hang out with. I call them my bubble. We hung out together on Tuesday nights through the pandemic. And we watched, first we watched Supergirl and then a bunch of other stuff. And now we get together every Tuesday night and watch about 3 hours worth of superhero shows or science fiction shows. And we eat pizza and drink wine. And it's Monday the 7th now. So we decided tomorrow night we're gonna watch election returns for a change. Probably a horror show, for heaven's sakes. But
I was gonna say that's quite a jump, going from superhero stuff to election results.
Yeah.
But hey, look, you're drinking wine while doing it, so it's gonna be fun either way.
I bring the wine. It's a tax deduction. We talk business. It's okay.
Hey, welcome back. That was a great interview. I have to say so. Even though I was a part of it, I will toot our own horn. Horn kicking ass as always too. It was a fun guy to talk to. And look, talking to a guy who created some really mainstream nowadays for sure and pivotal characters in DC history was awesome. I love Superboy Prime. Of course, he doesn't seem to be as fond of the new incarnation as maybe I am, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's also just such a sort of a mind-blowing thing that this is a guy who had such a long run on the biggest superhero in the world. Like, everybody in the world knows Superman, and he was the man responsible for ushering in so many stories for so many years and really opening Superman up to millions of readers through that time. So it's incredible the run he had on the biggest hero of all time.
Guys, bang up job on this interview. Sorry you couldn't make it, but of course you guys carried on and carried through with flying colors. Elliot seems like a cool cat. Loved the the answers he gave on all your various questions and digging into those DC characters, and then of course his animation work. So fantastic episode. What can I say? Hats off. If you like this episode, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Listen to our other stuff. Tell your friends. Tell everybody you know about the Dollar Bin Bandits. And we will be back next week. See ya.